Well, let me ask you about that. Sort of just to linger on that, the amount of concentration required. Um, Cal Newport wrote a book called Deep Work. He's a theoretical computer scientist. Um, he took quite seriously the task of allocating the hours in the day for that kind of deep thinking, and then the mathematicians is theoretical computer scientists on steroids. So, for your own life and what you've observed, let me ask the big question: how to think deeply, how to find the mental, psychological, pragmatic space to really sit there and think deeply.
Mm.
How do you do it? In the moments you remember where you really deeply thought, what was it, an accident? Was it deliberate?
No, it's deliberate because, first of all, my first years as a mathematician, I worked every day, weekends, holidays, doesn't matter. I didn't even question that. So I would feel something's missing if I took a day off.
Mhm.
And, so it was just a kind of a sustained effort. The point is that still the process is non-linear, to go back to what we discussed earlier, that in other words, the way I see it is you are making an effort to bring all the information into focus, what you believe is correct. And you're playing with different ways of connecting things. But it is a total miracle when suddenly there is insight strikes.
Mm-hmm.
It is not something that, in my experience, could be predicted or even anticipated, or like brought closer. There is a famous story about Einstein that he used to, go think, and then go for a walk, and like he would whistle and sometimes. So I remember the first time I heard of this story, I thought, how interesting! So what a coincidence that this came to him when he was whistling.
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, it's not. This is how it works in some sense, that you have to prepare for it, but then it happens when you stop thinking, actually. So the moment of discovery is the moment when thinking stops. And, you kind of almost become that truth that you're seeking. But you cannot do it by will in some sense. It's kind of like, how in the Eastern tradition they have this concept of satori, like in Buddhism, in Zen Buddhism, they have this satori, which is enlightenment. And so the various reports of Buddhist monks or Buddhist masters who have had experienced satori. But they say you can't do it by will. You cannot make it happen. If anything, you have to relax to let it come to you. It's kind of like that. So I think that what matters, but you say how to think. The point is that we're talking about such an esoteric area. Like mathematics is really esoteric area. It's a really strange subject where you try to fit everything in this very, very stringent set of rules. To obey those rules.
Isn't it basically the hardest manifestation of a puzzle that we're all solving in different other disciplines, but this is the hardest puzzle?
But yes and no, because there is just a different. For instance, there is a different criterion for what constitutes progress. For instance, physics, a lot of arguments they make, they are not rigorous from mathematical perspective. It is kind of an intuitive argument. Like, we think it is like this, and this is acceptable in the subject for a good reason. And so there is some play. It's more like human activity, day-to-day activity. Like, for instance, if you and I discuss something, you have an idea and I have an idea, and we argue about it, and something seems more plausible, something seems less plausible. And so we may decide to take this point of view or that point of view as a provisional sort of like point of view and go with it.
Mm-hmm.
In mathematics, it doesn't work this way. You either prove it or you don't. And oftentimes, you get to the point where there is this much you need to prove, and it just wouldn't come to you, and you just don't see it, and it can go on for months. Super frustrating. But without it is nothing, kind of,